All right, I think we're live. Gonna try and record this again. It's been quite some time since I've recorded my last video for people, and I completely forgot to share my screen after a half an hour video. So I'm going to not make that mistake again and share my screen this time. Bear with me, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. So, excellent start to my day. Still waking up. But I wanted to get this out for you guys, so you guys had a starting point for a lot of this. Now, today I want to cover a couple quick topics with the SERPX Cloud, and for me, the most important one to get started with is going to be keyword research. It's very important that we get the keyword research topic covered because it's your main thing that you have to do outside of the platform itself, right? The platform itself takes input, and the only major input that you have to do is the keyword research. So this is the most important thing to cover with this. Everything else is just simple settings and understanding what those settings are. So by covering the keyword research, this should help everyone understand a little bit more about how to use the platform itself. I'm going to shoot this in two separate videos. The first one's going to be the keyword research itself and different ways to think about it. With what we're doing here today, we're doing what's called mass page builders. And right now, we are the only tool out there that is a mass page builder that is still working correctly and as intended. All the other mass page builders out there have been squashed in the last year, 2 years with updates. They don't work like they used to. And there is a few particular reasons as to why. I won't go into that in this video, but Google got very clever about how they deal with mass page builders. Fortunately, everybody that's watching this video is also using SERPX, so that will not be a problem for you. Now, before we get started, I want to talk about a handful of tools that we can use. The first one is you need a keyword research tool. Now, it doesn't matter what it is. There's tons of tools out there. Everybody has their own keyword research tools that they use, that they prefer. You know, in this, wherever you got started in your industry, usually the first gurus or people, mentors that you have give you some sort of recommendation. This keyword research is your foundation. So whatever tool that you want to use, it's up to you. In today's example, I'm going to be using SEMrush because preferably I use that one within my agency. It's a very simple to use tool. I like showing it to clients. It's a great forward-facing, easy to understand client tool. Ahrefs also has competition analysis keywords, which are great, but it's less client-facing, so we prefer to use SEMrush within our agency. Again, though, you don't have to. It's just the tool that we happen to use. Now, another tool that you're going to need is Excel. Excel, we're going to do some very simple formulas, nothing crazy and complicated, but everybody here should have some level of proficiency within Excel, or at least some access to some type of program like Excel. Google Drive has one. I don't know how advanced their formulas are within there, so there is some limitations on that. I'd really highly suggest you get Excel. They still control all the patents, so there's a reason why the Google's version is not as good as the original one. And the last thing is a brain. You need to be thinking about what you're doing. And just because you have a new tool that comes your way, don't forget about everything that you already know. You know, this industry is plagued with misinformation, more so than almost any other industry I've ever seen. But use that to keep an open mind with things, but don't dump everything that you already know in your brain. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about strategy. You know, and I'm not going to cover this too in depth right now because this is a whole separate topic, which we could shoot many hours and hours of videos on. But with this, try to think about what you're trying to do with this? What is your purpose for creating these sites? Is it to drive traffic? Is it for linking? Is it for both? What is your purpose of what you're trying to do with these builds? One common example of that is to inject keyword relevancy, and with that also the traffic, right? So one of the things I was going to mention is about these tier ones. You should treat SERPX as and SERPX Cloud as a tier 2 and beyond tool. But what that means is probably, when I say it and when you understand it, is probably two very different things. Tier 1s are page-based, not property-based. And I want you to burn that into your brains because it is the biggest piece of misinformation I've ever seen in the industry. And even the people that out there that are teaching this don't understand it. Tier 1s are page-based, which means that you can have a tier 3 on your money site. So think about that. It's hops. That's all it is. It's hops from the source page, right? So if you're trying to rank your money site page, anything that links to that page is a tier 1, whether it's an internal link or an external link. It is still a tier 1. That's it. Simple as that. You can have an external link that is a tier 1 property. That's perfectly fine, right? But for the purposes of what we're trying to accomplish here, I want you to reframe your understanding of what you know about that. Because when you understand that, you have the ability to take something like SERPX and put it on your money site and use it as a tier 2 property on your money site. There are people that I've seen using the plugin version of this that were able to do some really nifty things because they understood this concept, or at least enough about it to be able to use it like that. So when you are able to think about things in the correct way, what you can do with it, the possibilities become endless. So again, tiers are hops, not property-based. They can be property-based. You know, that's how a lot of the GSA tools and all that type of stuff works, because you're building a single page. So it looks like it's property-based. But in reality, it's all page-based. All right. Now with that rant over with, let's talk about our keyword research today. So I'm going to skip down to this bottom piece with the variations end form. So this is everything that's been echoed by Brad, by Pierce. This talks about the different forms of your keyword research at the end. It can be in three different, it can look like three different major pieces. It can be niche-based, right? These are just purely your niche keywords. It can be geo-based, pure geo type of keywords. Or it can be niche plus geo. All right. In its simplest form, I don't know if I need to explain these concepts any further about what the differences are. I'll give you a few examples to show you, but that it should be fairly self-explanatory and it should make sense once we start diving down into it. So one of the things I want to talk about today is the different methods that are used to create a large set of keywords, because that's what we need when we're doing mass page builders. Now we can create smaller sets for these, and sometimes those are perfectly fine, but sometimes we need larger ones. You know, especially with a tool like this, one of the most powerful things that we can do is take advantage of frequency of publish. What that means is adding in new content. There's a freshness factor that exists within the Google algorithm. Anybody that's ever added a new blog post to their money site knows that their keywords pop up every time they push a new blog post. And that has to do with the freshness algorithm being hit over and over and over. It means the site is alive. It means that people are using the site, or the person that's running the site is actively publishing content. So it doesn't mean it's stale and stagnant. So One of the reasons why SERPx works so well is because of that freshness factor and constantly hitting on it. So you want to be posting keywords on some frequency. Now, with that said, there's two major ways that we can go about our keyword research. We can use existing long tails, or we could start to form new keywords. I separate these out because there's two different ways of thinking about things. Using existing long tails just means simply going and doing our keyword research, right? Now, this is great to come up with niche topics and keywords for the niche. This is not so great when we're talking about the geo. With the geo, we're going to want to form new keywords, and we'll talk about that. The same thing can apply for the niche, though. We can take a lot of these existing long tails and apply them in a way to form new keywords to drive additional traffic. And with the forming of the new keywords, we can append prefixes and suffixes to generate new terms. We can also use databases to create new terms from. And we'll go and talk about this a little bit more in depth. Now, let me pull up my keyword research document, wherever it's sitting. All right. All right, so let's go to this. This would be an example of a pure niche keyword list. Now, this is related to Canada, because I'm currently in Canada doing a bunch of work, but you'll see that this is really just a niche based keyword list. Now, one thing I would do is strip out all the geo from this list. In this case, I don't really consider the country geo, although technically it is. What I would be wanting to strip out is city names, and potentially even province is probably fine. It just depends on what layer that you're existing on. So that if you're in the States, that you want to strip out any of your city-based keywords for sure, and get down to the core type of keywords. And we'll open up a keyword tool real quick. Give you an idea of how to search for these type of things. All right, dashboard. So this quick example, I'm going to use the word term plumber. And we're going to go down to the full report. This is going to kick me into a tool called the Keyword Magic tool. Now, this is an excellent tool. I really, really like this one for this side right here. What this is this is a clustering of entities, if you will. So what we have is we have our original search term, which is plumber or plumbers, and it takes and extracts all the long-tailed entities that exist, and it clusters them based on this. So it's found a bunch of commonality ones, and you can see the numbers of them right here, all the way down here. Plumber, that's hilarious. Anyways, so if I click on this one, it'll take all the variations of plumber plus near and put this into one list. So these will be a lot of the near me type of terms that some of you are familiar with. This one would be all the terms related to plumbers and emergency. And you'll see that there's one that has both plumber, emergency plumbers near me. Now, all this is the entity groupings. This is very useful to know because we understand when we're doing our keyword research, it's very similar how we can create these type of keyword lists. One of the things you could do is you could simply just take this entire 104,000 terms and just extract it out and make a giant list of niche-based ones that way. Again, though, you would need to clean up all of the different ones like this that contain geo, because you don't want to have a geo on a pure keyword list. And that obviously would take quite some time. So These are very useful, just pulling out various different terms. You could create your buckets around this if you wanted to. You know, the buckets for near, buckets for emergency, buckets for local, so on and so forth. This is one potential way that you could do it, just like this. Again, this comes back to how you want to use this. So coming back to this, I won't go too far in depth with niche because this is not a very complicated keyword research. This is similar to everything that you guys already know and have used in the past. You're not learning anything new with this one, or you shouldn't be. But what is different is the geo. So when we're talking about geo, a lot of what we're going to need to do is create new terms, because these terms may not show up in the keyword tools. So what I have here is a database, my own database, of a list of cities in Arizona. So I have about 250 in this list, and I have various terms up here which are modifiers to that. And you'll see what I did was I appended these modifiers with the geo. Now, how do we come up with these terms? Well, one of the best ways of doing that is we can come into a tool like this, and we can type in a term like, let's say, Chicago. Now, the reason why I'm choosing a city, I'm not just choosing any random city. I'm choosing a large city in the particular country or whatever that you're trying to target. I'm choosing a large city because I want to see the most amount of variations that exist for this particular keyword. I want a big data set to come pull back with, so then I can then narrow down which terms I want to target. And you're going to have to dig through this to find them, but there's plenty of examples. Weather could be a great modifier. Time, you know, a lot of these are going to be served by the particular search query, but you could start digging through these and finding more. Like public library might not be a bad one. Let's see, map, time zone, museums. That'd be a great one to use. You can just keep digging through this. There's so many. Events. DMV is another great one. Department of Motor Vehicles. These are really hard to find. If you've ever done a search query in some of these cities yourself, trying to find a DMV in another city, not very good at it. So this is definitely a way to suck down some traffic. There's tons of different terms in here. You just have to go digging through here, and you'll find some. These particular ones that I generated, I pulled from AdWords. But again, going through there and coming up with these, you know, you could generate 10 of these. Now, if you have 250 cities in your particular state and you generate 10 of these, that gives you 2,500 keywords. That's tons. Now, in order to do that, we're going to come up, the formula is going to look like this. We're going to press equals, and we're going to take this top one, click it, and we're going to press F4. Now what that's going to do is create something called an absolute reference. That means when we drag this down, it's not going to try and pull another term. It's going to only use this particular term. And then we're going to use the term and. So that means we're going to combine another cell. And then we're going to do. So this 3 sequence of characters here indicates that I'm appending a space so that the keywords themselves don't combine without the space. And then this term. And then we can double click and drag that down. And you'll have to do it again for this particular one again. So again, we're going to do this one more time. click this cell, F4 to create an absolute reference, and add the space and term. And just like that. So fairly simple. And remember, I'm not going to cover adding them into the buckets in this particular section. This one's just about the keyword research in general. Now we go over to niche plus geo. Again, this is going to be a very similar example. I pulled the geo from the previous list, 250 locations, and all I'm doing is adding in some major term modifiers. It's not difficult to do. These are your main head terms. So car loan, auto loan, so on. Now, these are the main ones. You could do car finance. You could start adding in more longer tailed keywords. There's plenty of stuff here, whatever has the search volume. Now, the database one is different. This is probably not something that you've heard a lot about. You've heard about geodatabases. I'm sure that's been something that's mentioned in the past. This is how you come up with all of these different geo ones. I might be appending a geodatabase inside of SERPEX. I'm talking about that one with the guys, if I want to include that one or not, or if I want to keep that one private. So it's one of the next things that we're discussing about adding inside of SERPEX. I'll let you guys know as it gets closer and we make a decision on it. Now, with that said, let's go over here and take a look. Now, every niche has its own respective databases or its own respective terms that you can modify with in a very unique way. All right. So if we're talking about cars, it turns out that there's a lot of different types of cars. Tons of different types of cars. So many that in this list alone, we have 7,252 different types of cars. And this isn't the entire full database of existing of cars, because there's cars that existed long before these ones. These are pretty much 1980 and onward, right? So imagine that as soon as I take a term and I modify it with this, I have 7,250, right? So this right here makes almost 15,000 keywords. That simple. Just by adding another modifier, I can make another 7,500. So now this doesn't just exist for the auto industry. This exists almost across every industry if you stop and you think about it and you understand what it is that you're doing within your particular industry. So if we were talking about pest control, what types of pests are we trying to control, right? Ants, mosquitoes, termites, cockroaches. The list goes on and on, right? The same thing applies, for instance, for animal removal. What types of animals are we trying to remove, right? So simply ask yourself that question. And this is where having an understanding of the industry that you're in is invaluable. The more you understand about your industry, the more you'll understand about these type of terms and where you need to generate them from. This type of stuff requires that you get creative. You have to think outside the box to think about how to generate these. But if you generate these type of lists, no one else has them, right? I had to go find a database in order to generate these type of terms. But what this allows me to be able to do is make a lot of unique terms that other people are never going to target. So I want you to think about these and just really use your head with this type of stuff. Don't forget about what you already know and think about how you can generate all these different types of keywords. When we're talking about mass page builders, we're talking about a lot of bulk pages. Your mini-nets don't necessarily need to be insanely massive, in 15,000 pages, but you need to know how to think about keywords like this. Because once you set up your keyword buckets, SERPx is designed for you to keep building sites over and over and over. So you go make a 15,000 keyword bucket, you can generate yourself 100 or 1,000 sites from that. This is why I built the tool the way I did. Alrighty, guys. I hope this helps. I wanted to make sure that we covered one of the most foundational topics. Again, you don't need to use the tools that I'm using. In terms of SEMrush, you can use any tool that you want. This is just an example. Alrighty. In the next video, I'm going to record how to go over the inputting of the keyword buckets and different ways and styles of you guys doing that. Alrighty. Thank you, guys.